be lit, so you don't have to. It's our second ever one, and we're having a wine after a long day at work. We thought, what better time to talk about the realities of renovating while you're working full time?
Yeah.
Let's get stuck into it. Number one is the length of time that your project is going to go.
Don't make a grand design mistakes and be like, we're just going to be doing this job, it's going to take us 6 months, we'll be in by Christmas. No, you won't.
Never set a Christmas
It's not going to
deadline.
happen.
Never set a Christmas deadline.
We have
Brad
genuinely set a Christmas deadline this year.
But never set a Christmas deadline.
I didn't say it was going to be finished, but there's a deadline.
If you're working full time and you're the one driving the project, doing the project, setting unrealistic timelines is going to be something that just causes stress and panic. And really, like, the more we've gone through this, you know, the stresses come from your own limitations that you put around your project, and obviously so many other things that we'll get to. But a big one is, we said we'll do this by X and we haven't, and then you feel stressed.
It sort of gives you anxiety to try to work harder, you put more pressure on yourself and you don't feel like you're getting enough accomplished in a quick enough time, and you can be your own worst enemy really quickly.
So I think timelines are really important. We use them to like motivate ourselves and keep yourselves moving. It's just a balancing act between what's actually realistic. If you're working your 9 to 5 or longer for a lot of people, or shift work for a lot of people, and that impacts when you can actually work on your house because of sound regulation and stuff. But if you're working a big part of your week, you need to be realistic about when you're going to get things done. So our tip in this part is that we do fortnightly programs where we actually look at our calendars and we say what needs to get done and like actually when can we do it, and we put that time aside, because otherwise you're kind of throwing random timelines that are just kind of pulled out of nowhere. So you really need to allocate the time in your week.
And yeah, crossing it with your social life. Some people like to really throw all their energy into a project, and it's completely dependent on the size. You might sacrifice 6 months of your life to get a certain part of the project or the whole project finished. Whereas us, you know, we are a 5-year commitment, and a lot of people go, what? Because if we want to live a life as well as renovate an entire house, it genuinely will take us 5 years.
It will.
And we want to be able to enjoy that process as well as going away, seeing our friends and family, and not sacrificing and being hermit crabs and working on our house 24 hours a day.
Tip number 2. Have you had any of your wine?
Yeah, I'm sipping on it.
Okay, I haven't seen you.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's so yummy.
Really, really yummy.
Tip number 2 is being prepared to live in a renovated home. This
Quote
is
unquote chaos.
It's not just the chaos of the house that you live in, but it's the chaos of your life. Like, you'll constantly be working on the house until you have to leave to go to a social thing. You're constantly managing your time like it's a scarce resource, and that makes your life feel chaotic.
Yeah, especially when you have to sacrifice the small things that you don't usually do throughout the week. Cleaning the stovetop in the kitchen, putting your clothes away, making sure that you've actually done the washing so you've got underwear. These are all very small things that usually take up a big part of people's lives, but when you're renovating, that just gets pushed aside because it is just low priority. But you need to balance the two out, so it gets quite chaotic.
When you have a list of 1,000 things long, you know, cleaning the toilet's going to go to the bottom, but then, you know, living in a dirty house or living in a chaotic house or a messy house, it makes you feel stressed, like it does. And you're constantly looking around like, I've got to do that, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. So you need to learn to kind of live in a temporary amount of chaos.
Yeah, and just dedicate a very small and very quick amount of time to getting things up to scratch, so that, I mean, personally for us, we both don't like a lot of clutter, so we benefit a lot from spending, say, half an hour every couple of weeks, just to be like, we need to clean this place up because it's completely trashed. Just to feel like we're in a comfortable part of the house while we absolutely tear the back out and, you know, make a mess out there.
One of my favourite things to do when I feel like a part of the house is just chaotic is like set a 15 or a 20-minute timer, because often I just don't have the time. I do have 15 minutes and I'll just clean or organise as much as I can in that 15 minutes, and then I'll move on, but at least it's something.
Yeah, and goes a long way.
Tip number 3.
That's 6.
No, it's 3. Time becomes your biggest asset and maybe your greatest curse.
It is so critical, the time that you spend on the house and the sacrifices that you make for your social life, because if it's not progressing and it's not moving forward, it just feels like a never-ending task. So making sure that that time is allocated to just say, even if it's 4 hours, a couple of days a week on a weeknight, especially if you've got full-time jobs, and maybe one day of your Saturdays, if not the whole weekend, if you can make it work, goes such a long way if you see progression happening versus really not being able to throw much time at it and it feeling like you're not getting anywhere.
The caveat is that if you're putting every bit of time you have towards your house and you don't see your friends and family or just like do things, you can just like feel absolutely isolated, you can get cabin fever, and you can just start, your mental health can really start to suffer. So like for me, seeing people is like a lifeline for me, and if I don't do that regularly, I start to feel really sad. You know, I want to see my friends, I want to see my family, I don't want to feel like I'm losing touch with people. It's something that's really important to me. Today, you do have to sacrifice time, that's part of living life and the decision that we made to have balance.
Yeah, exactly right.
But the tricky thing about it is that you feel guilty either way. And as Brad says, when you don't see progression and you don't have momentum in your house, you start to feel like this project will never get done. Like you're stuck in a rut and you can't move things forward. And often with renovating, the momentum is everything. We might make a separate video on that. But keeping momentum is sometimes the thing that will keep a project alive. With the moment you come to a standstill, you might not be able to pick that project up again for a while. Just losing momentum. Terrible.
And it's important to note, like it can sometimes be just such an overarching thing that is just so monumental in size, and the only way to get through it is with momentum and breaking it down into little itty bitty tasks so that you're just completing small steps at a time, and that way you do feel like you're working towards actually finishing something, as opposed to just looking at what we have at the moment, which is a half-empty house, going, God, how are we going to live in this in 9 months?
Yeah, like you look at the whole project and you think, oh my God, like the list of things to do is never ending.
Enormous. If you're in the construction industry, you know exactly what's involved in that.
And it just becomes overwhelming. So you just start at the top, make lots of lists, and just keep moving through them and make sure you feel like you have progression. 4, financial strain.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Which we're feeling, if we're being honest, and we're trying to be honest, we're feeling really hard at the moment.
Yeah, we've got probably the biggest heart of the home coming up. So out of the 5-year plan, this is probably what's going to suck the most amount of cash out of our account, purely because it's got appliances, it's got services, much more than what we've done in the last couple of years on sort of the finishes.
It's the biggest part. Kitchen, laundry, living. It is the actual heart.
It's the heart of the home, and we're going to gain the most from it, so it makes sense that it's going to cause the biggest part of our budget, including things like cladding, which we haven't touched before. So there's just a huge amount of elements in this that's costing a lot, and that has created quite a lot of stress for, both of us who are on a dual full-time income, has still created a lot of stress.
So, obviously when you're doing projects at this scale, you're going to have a budget, or you should have a budget.
We did not have a budget at all.
No, for the first half we didn't, and that was because we had a little bit more financial freedom. But at this point in the project, we don't. We need a pretty strict budget now, but we also have to look at how that cash flow is going to work and our spending, so we're not getting to the end of the project having to buy all these big things and we just don't have the money there available. We need to be able to keep that cash flow moving. The things that have worked for us when it comes to like balancing these finances and is definitely cash flow, looking at where you can buy things early so that when you get toward the end you won't end up with a huge bill. I think it's also forecasting our big milestone spends. Brad touched on it, cladding, appliances, where are you going to spend the most amount of your money and when and how will you get there, so that you can keep your job moving. The thing you don't want to happen is that you run out of money and you can't keep moving forward. And so I guess the other thing would be is like finding ways to save money. Can you do it yourself? Can you get onto Facebook Marketplace? Can you shop around? Do you need that thing?
Yeah, a bit of sacrifice as well, I think, and clever design and even design pivots as well, just to try and figure out, and just to try and be clever about how you can get what you're after without having to spend a fortune on a high-end product.
Yeah, I think it's common to go into a project with these really big ambitions, and often you don't know how expensive things will cost, and until you're in it. And so maybe it's about being quite flexible or a little bit more flexible with your design choices, and how can you reach a similar look and feel but maybe not on that kind of budget. You know, what can you replicate in that design that's still going to bring you what you want but maybe not at that high-end budget.
Yeah, and forward planning that as much as you can is going to help flag any of those issues of what you do need to sacrifice, and what are some things that you would actually prefer to not sacrifice and put more money into.
And then of course the final thing about that is like, it's usually either time or money. If you've got 2 full-time jobs, you're constantly earning money, and but often you're shorter timelines, you might have to be comfortable pushing your timelines out to save up to make that renovation happen.
That's it.
We've always talked about, is it the time or is it the money? You often can't, well, if you're like us, you can't have both.
Not. Very fortunate people can have both, but...
we're not those either. Number 5 is burnout.
Things ebb and flow throughout the program, and as we sort of touched on earlier, you have periods where you throw a lot of time at it, and then sometimes you just need to pare back, maybe save a bit of cash and take your time. But having said that, when you are trying to hit a program and move forward, sometimes you need to work towards a goal. And that for us in the past has looked like many stages of the project where we've just gone, we are having dinner at 9:30 every night. We're going to get home from work and just get straight into it. And then even after that, work to like 11 and just push ourselves to get to that next sort of step in the program. But the sacrifice, I guess, or on the other hand, that means is that you do just burn out. You just feel like you're just absolutely ruined, and working full time during the day, coming home, working 4, 5, 6 hours when you get home after a full day's work, which is usually 10 plus hours. That's freaking exhausting.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's done a renovation project will know the end part of the project is nothing but labor. Like, you just have to throw time at it, especially getting all the details done. So for us, it really did mean months on end of every single night. We would just work and work and work. And we were lucky that we had a holiday at the end of that. So we were pushing to a time where we could kind of relax and celebrate. I think the hard thing about burnout is it's not feasible for everybody to live in half a house. It's not feasible for everybody to live in a half renovated house. There are practical reasons why you have deadlines. So if you do have to push hard, you just have to manage the workload.
It's kind of necessary burnout. I mean, it depends if you can really manage your time nicely so that you've got a really steady progression. It's great, but when you get into some of the details, and especially when like life events just throw curveballs at you, you've just got to be prepared kind of for everything to come about. You know, it's not an ideal situation, but you know, sometimes you really just got to push hard, and it won't always be like that. It's a really small period of time. Like for us, I think the biggest was 2 weeks of full-time work each night to try and push and get ourselves over that next hurdle. And you know, as I said, after that, you take a weekend off, go away for a little while, treat yourself.
Even if you set a small, like a weekend away, or even just like a night in a beautiful restaurant, something you can work toward and just give yourself a reward, even if it's, you know, sitting at your new space and having a beautiful, it's like something to work towards.
It is, yeah.
I do think like one thing that's got us through burnout is engaging in really creative projects within the build. So we've set ourselves like specifically exciting parts of our build that we're really keen to try, because it's not something we've tried before. It's really creative. It's something we actually get excited for. So even though we were working massive hours, we would be quite excited because it's the coming together of all the elements you've worked really hard to get to. So whether it was pouring the cement for these bench tops or putting together the feature wall, when you get to these parts that are quite exciting because you've planned and designed and worked toward this, it can be really motivating to keep moving forward. But you just need to be a bit careful that you don't burn yourself out. Thank you for joining us for another 5 Tip Talk. It's our second one. We were hoping to make this a series, but it's just taken us a bit of time because we work full time.
Slow series. But we will get there eventually.
We're doing all the things, but we love talking about renovation and design, so we'll talk to anybody about it. So this is a really fun time for us.
Yeah.
If you have any questions or you have a topic that you'd like to talk about, let us know and we'll take it on next time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.